Hello, friends, and welcome to Ubuntu Narratives podcast, where we bring you inspiring African stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary acts towards an equal and just world. Through these stories, we hope to inspire and equip you with practical tools to be the change you want to see for equality and justice. This first season of Ubuntu Narratives podcast is called Working Differently and sheds light on disability inclusion at the workplace. Through insightful conversations with experts and individuals with lived experiences, this series explores strategies for fostering a more inclusive work environment, breaking barriers, and promoting equal opportunities for all. I'm your host, Christine Butegwa, and this podcast is brought to you by Jabali Consulting. Our guest today is Henry Saaba, who is the Disability Inclusion Coordinator at the Federation of Uganda Employers. Welcome, Henry.
Thank you so much.
So, Henry, tell us a bit about who you are, who is Henry the person, and what motivated you to become a disability inclusion advocate.
Thank you so much, Christine. It is a pleasure to be here. My name is Henry Saaba. I work with the Federation of Uganda Employers. At the Federation of Uganda Employers, I'm the Disability Inclusion Coordinator. At the Federation of Uganda Employers currently hosts the Uganda Business and Disability Network, and I do coordinate the activities of the Uganda Business and Disability Network. Basically, that network was started in 2019 to support the private sector, to ensure that the private sector basically promotes disability inclusion at their workplaces. I'm really passionate about disability inclusion. At the Federation of Uganda Employers, there is that commitment from management to supporting issues of disability inclusion, and therefore that commitment resonates well with my passion to support disability inclusion.
Mm-hmm. So for someone who doesn't know the Federation of Uganda Employers, could you give us a bit of background about this federation?
The Federation of Uganda Employers is the official representative body of employers in Uganda since 1960. We've been around for over 6 years. We are older than Uganda's independence. And all along we've been serving the interests of the employers. The Federation of Uganda Employers basically has services that are categorized into 3. The first one is policy and advocacy. Now, with policy and advocacy is where, for example, we engage the government on issues that affect employers to ensure that the government puts an enabling environment for the employers. Then we do have the employment relations and legal, and this is where we support our members when it comes to issues that need representation, issues that need legal advice, and things of that kind. And lastly, the third one is business support services. Under the business support services is where we support the members and other stakeholders in the area of supporting them with trainings that are geared towards improving the productivity of their workers. We do have programs still under that, and we also do have events and activities that support employers, basically. I could say the Federation of Uganda Employers exists to support the employers, but also to work harmoniously with all the other stakeholders in the tripartite. That is the government through the Ministry of Labour, the workers through their trade unions.
Wow, FUE has been there longer than Uganda's independence.
Yes,
interesting.
Correct.
So when did FUE start getting interested in disability inclusion in the workplace?
I could still say, for as long as I've been at the Federation of Uganda Employers, issues of disability inclusion have been given special treatment. I may not really state when, since it has been around for over 6 years, but I could say that for as long as I've been at the Federation of Uganda Employers, there has been that commitment from management to put issues of disability inclusion at the forefront, just like any other issues that they have already discussed. So I'm glad to say that there's commitment at the Federation of Uganda Employers to support disability inclusion among its membership. So the members of the Federation of Uganda Employers have gone through awareness campaigns, trainings, updates, basically in an effort to ensure that they are inclusive more than ever.
And how exactly do you raise awareness and advocate for disability inclusion among your member employers?
First of all, I'd like to tell you that the Federation of Ugandan Employers is spread across the whole Uganda. We do have offices, our head offices here in Namave, but away from the head office, we also do have 3 regional offices. We do have one in the Eastern region, based in Mbale. We have one in the Northern region, in Lira, and one in the Western region, in Kasese. Now, in all those regional offices, we've always held the awareness trainings. We've done them here in Central, for sure, with that we've been able to do. But no, we've not only stopped here in Central. We've gone ahead to ensure that in each of those regions, we hold awareness trainings to ensure that we encourage the employers to be more inclusive. That's how we've been able to ensure that persons with disabilities, because we've witnessed it, the Federation itself has over the years hired the persons with disabilities. It has over the years recommended persons with disabilities to our members, and they have always delivered. So we go around holding such awareness workshops, encouraging employers to basically employ people with disabilities and explore the potential that exists, the potential that they have not yet explored.
And you have quite a lot of interesting initiatives as FUE. Could you tell us a bit more about those?
Thank you so much. Yes, quite a lot happens at the Federation when it comes to promoting disability inclusion. And among them, we do have what we call the Uganda Business and Disability Network, otherwise abbreviated as UBDN. Now, the Uganda Business and Disability Network is a network that exists to promote disability inclusion among the employers, especially the private sector. As the Federation, we have so many other engagements. So we chose that when we have a network that is solely dedicated to improving the disability inclusion among employers, then would go further. So it's a network that is currently posted at the Federation of Ugandan Employers solely to promote issues of disability inclusion. It started in 2019 with 8 founding members, but it has since grown, and it has since supported the employers in this journey of disability inclusion. But away from the Federation of Ugandan Employers being the secretariat for the Uganda Business and Disability Network, we do also have other initiatives that we've put in place to ensure that the issues of disability inclusion are still discussed at the forefront. We do have the Employee of the Awards. The Employee of the Awards, basically, these awards that recognize the best employers every year, and these awards are conducted by the Federation of Ugandan Employers. Now, one of the parameters to qualify one as a good employer is basically how they have been able to handle the issue of disability inclusion. And it is very express in the questionnaire, and one must really score highly in that line of disability inclusion to be recognized as a very good employer. So that's another initiative I could talk to you about. But away from that, we also do ensure that we write about disability inclusion in our publications. We do always publish monthly newsletters. We do have our annual journal magazine. We do specifically have a column that talks about disability inclusion. We're talking about a magazine that is available in hard copies, a magazine that is available online. And by this, we are trying to target so many people. And because of that, we've been able to deliberately write about disability inclusion. Some of the engagements we've been able to do, some of our upcoming activities, and things of that kind. We normally pick particular months where we talk about or where we write about disability inclusion. So I could still say we've deliberately chosen to talk about disability inclusion in a lot of publications. It is not by mistake that we do it, but we've deliberately done that. I would also like to tell you that the other initiative is that the Federation purposed to have a focal person, and it is me talking to you. And this is what we're encouraging employers to do. Have a focal person who handles issues of disability, such that they are not lost in any way. But they would like to request you that you allow me to make this call to all the employers that kindly get a focal person, designate somebody at the workplace to manage or to handle issues of disability inclusion. It doesn't have any financial implication. What happens is that you just basically have to engage somebody who you think is passionate about disability inclusion, and you ask them to handle such issues. This is what happened at the Federation of Ugandan Employers. I was not hired to manage issues of disability inclusion, but along the way, I was through the meeting I had with the executive director and the head of human resource. I was asked to take it on as another role, which I've embraced and I've done my part. So in the same vein, my call to the employers is that they may not necessarily hire somebody to manage issues of disability, since there's that financial implication, but they could pick from the existing team members to have somebody handle issues of disability inclusion. So I've just told you about those 4 initiatives that have happened at the Federation of Ugandan Employers deliberately to promote issues of disability inclusion. Quite others that I will be able to share with you as we go on.
And, from what I'm learning from what FUE does, like you've said, disability inclusion has been a very deliberate effort by the Federation
Correct.
to mainstream disability within its own organization.
Correct.
So because you're also an employer as the Federation.
Yeah, sure.
So I think the best practice you're showing is that it has to be a deliberate effort. Management and leadership have to have that commitment.
Correct.
And you're also talking about the importance of having a disability focal person in the workplace. Did you have to go through any training? I'm sure employers will say, oh, okay, it's a nice thing to have a focal person. Do I need to reskill my current staff to become a disability focal person?
Thank you so much. First, it started, of course, with the management, the Federation of Ugandan Employers. Like I've just said, we had a meeting with the executive director, the Federation of Ugandan Employers, together with the head of the human resource, and they prepared me to take on the role of coordinating disability inclusion activities at the Federation. Away from that, I did attend the Disability Academy. That training was organized by Light for the World together with other key stakeholders like ADD International, among others. So through the academy, I was equipped with skills. I was also given enough literature to read about disability inclusion. So by the time I left the academy, I was in a better position to manage issues of disability inclusion. But that was just the starting point. I can't say I know it all, but it gave me some good ground to be able to start off my journey of coordinating issues of disability inclusion at the Federation of Ugandan Employers. Specifically about the employers having a focal person, we do have some good news. Once the employer has accepted to have a focal person, at the Federation of Ugandan Employers, just like I just told you, we do have the Uganda Business and Disability Network. One of its roles is basically to coordinate issues of the disability inclusion and these trainings that are conducted at no cost. So if there's an employer out there, can reach out to you, Christine, if they really can't reach out to me, but I'm also available. But whoever is comfortable reaching out to you can always do so. And then you can always link them to us and we shall be able to conduct a free training. We can be able to mentor the coordinators, their respective workplaces, but we can also be able to hold for them disability inclusion awareness trainings or sensitizations at their respective workplaces, in-house trainings basically. That's how far we go to ensure that the employers try to raise the interests of the employers in disability inclusion. We go as far as conducting for them free disability inclusion sessions that they do not get to pay for. And also get to mentor some of their focal persons. And we are available to do that. This way we can be put on record that we shall support whoever employer wishes to promote disability inclusion, especially through trainings, through mentorships, and also if the employers out there and they wish to hire persons with disabilities, we are still available through our network to support them on how they can be able to accommodate persons living with disabilities at their workplaces.
So you've talked about you can also support employers who want to hire persons with disabilities. How would you do that in practical ways? I think you have something called the online the online skills gateway.
Yes,
Maybe you can talk a bit about how that supports recruitment and skilling.
Yes. Now, what happens is that, first of all, we need to change the mindset of some employers. There's no employer, since I started this journey of contributing to disability inclusion, I've not seen an employer who has expressly come out to say they're not interested in hiring persons with disabilities. But what I can say is that they have always expressed fears regarding the necessary reasonable accommodation. Not that they do not want entirely to employ, but their fear has been about reasonable accommodation.
For example, can you tell us more about accommodation? Some people may think, is it offering a room for my staff? What do you mean by accommodation?
The PWD Act defines reasonable accommodation, but it's such a long explanation. I just want to use these words that I can borrow from the way it has been defined from the PWD Act, such that somebody then understands. But before you get there, I want to mention that reasonable accommodation is not about having a nice room. Some people had that misconception that reasonable accommodation basically means when you take on somebody with a disability, it means you're going to give them a nice room where they can sleep. That is reasonable enough and stuff like that. Whereas you kind of relate to what we want, but that's not the correct way of defining reasonable accommodation. Reasonable accommodation basically means that you put in place measures that enable somebody with a disability to work freely. And some of the things that you put in place could be a ramp. Just imagine if somebody had a wheelchair and you only have steps that would hamper the accessibility, the movement of this person if there was no ramp. So this is what we say, that have in place a ramp. Once you have a ramp, then a person with a wheelchair doesn't have to be accompanied by any other person, especially if in this case they can be able to move the wheelchair by themselves. They may not have to ask somebody to push them to go over the steps. In this case, there is a ramp. So a ramp is a reasonable accommodation in this case. Then where funds can allow, we also encourage that you have toilets for persons with disabilities. But we would also like to mention that where you may not be able to have such, we encourage utmost cleanliness. Because, when somebody has a disability, depending on a disability, the way they are going to use the toilet is different from the way how other people are going to use it. Therefore, where you can't be in a position to have a separate central convenience for persons with disabilities, we encourage that employees exercise utmost cleanliness, but also have in place somebody who can always, clean these toilets regularly to ensure that at least the person with disabilities also find them clean enough for them. So that's another. A reasonable accommodation could be adjusting the seats that they use. For example, you very well know that some seats are made standard, some tables are made standard. But if you could try to adjust and they try to fit the nature of this particular person, then in that way, you're trying to offer what we call reasonable accommodation. There are some employers that have embraced it without even technically going for high-end measures, but trying to work with what they can do. For example, issues of ramps. They have somehow worked with their local service providers to create wooden ramps. Issues of sanitary conveniences, they have ensured that there's somebody who cleans the toilets regularly. Issues of seats, they have still worked with their service providers to ensure that they try to adjust. Then when it comes to advertising for jobs, they have always called upon persons with disabilities to also apply. So whatever you put in place to enable somebody with a disability work freely, just like the rest of us, is what literally we can call reasonable accommodation. Just think about something that should be put in place, and this is at your workplace, to ensure that somebody with a disability is able to work freely. And those are some of the things that we do. And at the Federation of Ugandan Employers, through the UBDN, the Uganda Business and Disability Network, we do conduct what we call basic accessibility audits. For comprehensive audits, we do have a partner that is called UNAPID to ensure that the workplaces are generally accessible through the audits they do. So you can always reach out to UNAPID. UNAPID can do a comprehensive accessibility audit. They have done this for a lot of employers. They have done this for a lot of multinational companies that are working here in Uganda. Multinationals really are at the forefront of inclusion. They really have enough experience to do comprehensive accessibility audits. But at the Federation, we do have a checklist that we also, by the cut out from that we did get from UNAPID, alongside the others that we got from the Disability Academy that we normally share with our members. And this checklist is basically a basic audit checklist. It basically talks about the first things that should be in a workplace to ensure that somebody with a disability is able to move freely. Things that I just did mention a few moments ago. Then also, the other thing I would like really to mention is the issue of embracing accessibility audits. I need to really emphasize it. Where you're not so sure, the Federation of Uganda Employers can support you with basic accessibility audits. Otherwise, if you need a comprehensive one, we also do have our partners, that's UNAPID, that can support an employer to ensure that they have a 360 accessible workplace.
Very interesting. Do you have some success stories of one or two success stories of companies that have worked that assessment, that basic assessment with you? And tell us a bit about their before and after. What changes did they make as a result of your assessment?
Thank you so much. Yes, we do have such companies. First of all, I'll begin by thanking them because their efforts have been deliberate. Christine, I'd like to tell you that whoever wants to walk this journey must be deliberate. It's not going to happen by mistake, by chance. Somebody must really purpose to be inclusive at the workplace. The following companies have been so deliberate about issues of disability inclusion, and as the Federation, together with our partners, we've been able to walk that journey together. We do have UBL, the Uganda Breweries Limited. It has really been at the forefront. Uganda Breweries Limited has been at the forefront, including adjusting its workplace to accommodate people with disabilities, including creating a production line that is for people with disabilities. I'd like to tell you that a production line is a sensitive line. If it gets messed up, you're going to lose a lot. But they chose to deliberately have a production line for persons with disabilities. And for that, we'd like to thank...
For our listeners, UBL is Uganda Breweries Limited.
Yes,
and their main product is beer.
Among others.
So what you're saying is they've created a production line for those beverages.
For persons with disabilities.
Okay.
Yes. They have created like that production line is like, it could have been handled by other people, but they chose that this line is handled by persons with disabilities. Every now and then they purpose to get better when it comes to issues of disability inclusion. Always increasing on numbers they hire when it comes to persons with disabilities. And there's proof that they're on the ground. Anybody can always organize to go and meet up with them to really benchmark and see how they have been able to walk that journey of disability inclusion, including ensuring that they start with the basics, the basic trainings to ensure that persons with disabilities are appreciated at their workplaces, because you need also to prepare the people that are currently working at your workplace. They need to be aware that they are going to work with persons with disabilities, and these persons with disabilities have no problem. They have just like them. They are also good enough to work. So yes, we do have Stanbic Bank. Stanbic Bank has also been at the forefront, hiring persons with disabilities. So those are the two I could mention. But there's quite a lot of others.
Fantastic. It's always good to learn from others.
And UBL is willing to support whoever would want to benchmark from them. That's the good news.
Yeah, very good news. Taking you to one of your other roles as Federation of Uganda Employers, you said you do policy advocacy. Uganda has been said to have really good policies when it comes to disability, gender equality, and so on. What would be your assessment in terms of where are the gaps and achievements at policy level, and what is FUE's role making the policy environment work around disability inclusion?
Okay, thanks a lot. Allow me first of all to start with what the government has done. Everything that we need to do is really well laid out in the PWD Act. At least the government has done its part. As far as the side of the law is concerned, the government has done that. Now, it's up to us to ensure that all that has been put in the PWD Act is enforced. This is where the Federation of Ugandan Employers, alongside other stakeholders, other partners now do come in to complement the efforts of the government. At the Federation of Ugandan Employers, just like I just did mention a few moments ago, we encourage our employers to be more inclusive, and this we deliberately do through the trainings that with the sensitizations, the disability inclusion trainings, the disability inclusion sensitization that we do conduct for them at no cost. Of course, with the support of partners, we try to ensure that at least the employers are aware of what they should do. The other, you did mention about the gaps. For me, the existing gap is inadequate enforcement, because at least there is a law, but which to some extent we've abused. You very well know that much as the laws are there, but there are times when people tend to misuse the existing laws. I wish we could get to understand this act, read it, and try to implement what is in the act, and also try to implement what other stakeholders have been able to pass on to us to ensure that at least once we implement what we've been told, what we've learned, we shall be able to make really some good journey as far as disability inclusion is concerned. So for me, it has been enforcement, somehow not it being very, very adequate. But once we get there, once we embrace and get committed to it, ensure that we enforce what we're supposed to do, then we shall really make some good journey for sure.
What would be your recommendation to government to close that gap around enforcement of the policies, the existing policies?
Government should continue encouraging employers, all the other stakeholders, and also continuously review its policies, review its laws to see how they can make them very, very friendly, very enforceable, and stuff like that. And also be on ground, have official parameters to measure the progress, because once there are such official statistics, then we can be able to know how far we've come and where we are destined to go. And also being on ground to support all the other stakeholders. The government should support everybody who's involved in the journey of disability inclusion. It's about exempting taxes, especially for guys that are providing gadgets that are used by persons with disabilities, to supporting trainings or sensitizations. There are more ways than one the government can come in, but most importantly, we hope to never give up on all the other stakeholders that are also promoting disability inclusion.
Yeah, and I think to support government, I think what FUE is doing is really commendable. For the initiatives that you do are really practical in terms of supporting employers to implement these good policies, the enabling policies that we have around disability inclusion. And I would encourage our listeners who are employers to take advantage of the services you've mentioned, to walk the journey with them. The assessments that you do, you also support their process of ensuring inclusive workplaces. As we close, Henry, what would be your parting shot?
Yes, indeed, I do have my parting shot to encourage employers to embrace the hiring of persons with disabilities. Those that have hired them, they have not regretted. At the Federation of Ugandan Employers, through the Uganda Business and Disability Network, we are available to support all employers that want to start this journey, or those that are already embracing it. We do offer sensitizations at no cost. We do offer trainings at no cost to ensure that we help support the employers to be more inclusive than ever before. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Henry. And we are really encouraged to hear the good practices that the Federation, along with its partners, are doing to make our society more disability inclusive, particularly at the workplace. Thank you, friends, for joining today's conversation. Keep the discussion going on social media using the hashtag Ubuntu Narratives. If you have stories to share or insights to contribute, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time.